7/25, 2024. I'm going to do a special episode of Stand Tall on this Thursday. We just wrapped up Taigong's 6 secret teachings, and I also want to just go ahead and wrap up the Wu Zi. We're going to go through several verses, far more than a usual episode, but not quite as many. Here's the Wu Zi, one of the other ancient military texts. I've been doing Wu Zi Tuesday in the past, so if you wanted to go back and find those videos to catch up. But right now we're on the one of the second to last chapters, adapting in the field, which I feel is very appropriate because we're adapting back to a different text to finish it out. Verse 7, Marcus Wu asked, imagine I run into the enemy in a low-lying area by a fast-flowing river. The water engulfs our chariots up to the yoke and wheels, and our cavalry is in danger of drowning. We have no boats. We cannot advance or withdraw. What should we do? Wu Qi replied, this is what I call river warfare. Do not use your chariots and cavalry. Stay on the bank. Find a vantage point and look all around until you can understand the dynamics of the river. Once you have figured out the different widths and depths at different points along the river, you will be in a position to defeat your enemy. If they try to cross to your side, attack them as they are halfway across. So, take a step back, gather vantage points, and gather intel on the terrain underneath the river. Do this as best you can before the attack, right? You have to focus on always advancing your perspective. The river is a good metaphor for life. Life moves fast. You have to understand it. You have to understand the flow of time. You have to understand the flow of money, the flow of electricity, the flow of water, and all of these things. All of these flows you have to understand, and you have to be able to figure out the different widths and depths at different points along your life, and you have to be able to take the advantageous position as best as possible. Part 8, verse 8, excuse me. Marcus Wu asked, it has been raining for days on end. The horses are having difficulty trotting through the mud, and the chariots cannot go anywhere. I am surrounded by the enemy on all sides. My troops are shaken. What should I do? Wu Qi replied, chariots can only be used in battle in dry, warm terrain. They will not work in wet areas. You should seek high ground and avoid lower lying areas in order to put your chariots to good use. Always travel along proper roads so that you can move easily whether advancing or withdrawing. If your enemies use chariots, make use of the tracks they leave behind. Verse 9, Marcus Wu asked, if the enemy suddenly attacks my fields and pastures, stealing my cattle and sheep, how should I respond? Wu Qi replied, verse 10, when faced with bandit raids, do not underestimate their strength. Make good your defenses. Do not counterattack. When the raiders retreat at dusk, they will be laden down with their spoils. At night, they will be afraid. They will want to withdraw as quickly as possible and may become separated and isolated from one another. If you pursue them, you can rout your enemy. Wait until they're afraid. Wait until they're separated and isolated. Wait until nightfall. Wait until they're over encumbered. Verse 11, Wu Qi said, let us talk about strategies for besieging a city. After you have taken the walls, enter their government offices and make yourself the new leader of their officials. Wherever your army goes, forbid the men from cutting down trees, destroying houses, pillaging food, killing livestock, or setting light to storehouses. This will demonstrate to the local population that you have no intention of violence. If anyone seeks surrender, accept and shelter them. 6. Inspiring the men. Verse 1, Marcus Wu asked, are strict punishments and handsome rewards sufficient to ensure victory? Wu Qi replied that there is much to say on this point. They are very important, but one cannot rely solely on punishments and rewards. What you should concentrate on is ensuring that your soldiers obey orders gladly, that they fight willingly when the army goes into battle, and that they are willing to give their lives in the heat of battle. Verse 2, Marcus Wu asked, how can I achieve this? Wu Qi replied, by promoting those who have done great deeds and inviting them to a banquet, and thereby encouraging those who have not yet distinguished themselves. 3. Marcus Wu proceeded to hold a banquet at the ancestral temple for 3 ranks of decorated soldier. The most decorated sat in the front row on the finest mats, using the best tableware, and consumed all 3 sacrificial meats. This is subtitled, the 3 sacrificial meats were pork, beef, and lamb. The next most decorated seat in the middle row, using less remarkable mats and tableware. The 3rd rank soldier, who had no particular distinction, sat in the back row and without any special tableware. After the banquet, Marcus also rewarded their parents, wives, and sons of those who had distinguished themselves outside the gate of the temple, and the size of the reward depending on the merit of the soldier in question. Parents who had lost a son on the battlefield received gifts every year and were visited by a representative of the government as a way of commemorating the deeds of their sons. 3 years after Wei began to operate the system, the state of Qin raised an army and reached the borders of Jihei. When the soldiers in the state of Wei heard the news, there was no need for officials to issue any order. Tens of thousands donned their armor and prepared to fight the invaders. I think that just goes to the strength of showing great leadership. How many great leaders do we have in today's day and age, right? Ready, Fire, Aim, a book that I've done a review on my channel. Brett Masterson, the author, does a great job explaining what leadership is like. And if you've ever read any Lencioni books as well. 4. Marcus Wu summoned Patrick Lencioni, right? The 6. Yeah, well, the motive right back there. That's a good one. 4. Marcus Wu summoned Wu Qi. Now I can see how effective everything you have taught me is. Wu Qi replied, every person has his own strengths and weaknesses. Momentum comes and goes. I suggest that you send out 50,000 ordinary men who have, as yet, no particular distinction. Let me lead them into battle. If we fail, then I become a laughingstock among all other lords and lose my authority throughout the land. To use an analogy, imagine a bandit who has been condemned to death hiding out in the vast wilderness. Even if 1,000 men are hunting him down, each of those men will be looking over his shoulder. Do you know why? Because he is afraid the outlaw will suddenly strike him down. By the same token, when a man commits his whole being to the fight, he can make 1,000 quail. The 50,000 I plan to lead today will be like the bandit. If I lead such men against Qin's army, they will find it difficult to stop us. 5. So the Marquis agreed to Wu Qi's plan. Wu Qi also took with him 500 chariots, 3,000 cavalry, crushing Qin's army of 500,000. Such a feat is a lesson in inspiration indeed. 6. One day before the battle, Wu Qi had issued a command to his forces. All of you are to follow this order. If the chariot division, cavalry, and infantry cannot capture their equivalents in the enemy army, then no one will receive any reward, even if you manage to break enemy lines. On the day of the battle, Wu gave very few orders, yet ended up making his mark for miles with the victory. And then the book ends with a dragon. Okay, so that wraps up the Wu Zi. And I think that one was a good one that we went through. I remember a lot of the Woozy Tuesday teachings, and it just really gave a lot of alternative insight into a little bit more of a disciplined mindset, a little bit more of a direct and more tactical and more fleshed out kind of approach to warfare, giving a very specific set of circumstances. And I think that case studies like that are why influencers in the business world, whether it be Gary Vee or Alex Hormozy, they gain this following for the same reason that The Art of War or even a text like the Woozy could, because it gives these very almost specific examples, this play by play taught from experience. And that's what keeps us standing tall.